Anyways, man. Yeah, you know what I find really sad nowadays? I'm totally gonna sound like Jordan Peterson. No, I should have to sound like Mickey Mouse when I talk like Jordan Peterson. You know,
You sound like a Macedonian band.
Anyway, man, how?
You just speak normally because I can't even understand you.
But I was having so much fun. Anyways, my point was, I find it really sad how there's so many people in the world today, and not just today, because I don't want to sound like a boomer, like, oh, it's the kids nowadays. No,
Back
like
in my day.
nowadays and for all of human history, we have zero interests, zero things that make them interesting, even zero activities that they partake in, zero skills they develop, just the bog standard. They got born, they went to school, they started a job, they worked out a life, they retired, and that's it. They never tried anything new. And that's the most miserable existence you can have as a human being, at least in my opinion. There was one anecdote by Kurt Vonnegut, I think it was called. I don't remember his family name, how it went, but he basically told an anecdote in his childhood, how he was spending a summer with a bunch of archaeologists. And one of the main leaders of the project basically started small talk to get to know him, like usually, like, okay, which sports do you play, what do you do with this and that. And Kurt just replied, oh, I don't do sports, I do art, I do music, I do poetry writing from time to time, but I'm not really good at any of them. And this is when the archaeologist actually replied to him, you don't have to do things to be good at them, you do things just for the hell of it, to give you an experience, to make you interesting. Even if you aren't good at something, just doing it makes you more interesting at it.
Yep.
I'm sure that any skill, whichever that you started, I've started, that anyone has ever started, at the beginning, they weren't a savant. They weren't natural. They probably sucked. But they stuck to it, and eventually, it paid off. They developed an interesting characteristic about them. Like what can I... Example, cooking.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I didn't know how to cook. I was horrible. I made the worst meals possible. But with time and with dedication and learning new things, I became a better cook. And now I see it as an art form.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy cooking as a form of expression. I get to create things that didn't exist before. I get to experiment. That's one characteristic about me that makes me a bit more interesting, I like to believe. That doesn't make me bland. But that's the smallest thing. It isn't even something huge. Cooking, the simplest thing. You do it every day. The point is trying to make us, it's mind-boggling to me. I won't just call it sad, I call it mind-boggling how people can go through life and be reluctant to learn any skill, anything new.
Not even learn, just do something.
Yeah.
And especially today when, okay,
Alright.
after you come home from work,
Yeah.
you just lay on the couch, watch TV, and you say, oh, my interest is watching movies. Okay, but you're just spending your time, you're not doing anything creatively.
Yeah.
And what you said, I'm gonna go from the beginning of what you said. Throughout history, there is a reason why throughout history people didn't have interests. Most of the population was working almost all day, and they only had time to sleep. They didn't have time to do anything. I believe that interests are a recent thing in human history because we get free time. People didn't have that in the past. And because of how throughout history humanity has been, I believe that most people are afraid to start doing something. You mentioned your cooking, right?
Yeah.
A few weeks ago we spoke about my poetry. How when I first started it was horrible. Like, I'm not ashamed to say it was horrendous. But throughout time I improved. Right now it's not perfect and it never will be. But it's much better than before because once you start doing something, you're gonna learn how to do something. You got hired for the first time in your life. Doesn't matter where. Fast food chain, an office. You had no idea how to do the job. But with time, you learned how to do it. It's the same with anything creative. Be it music, be it art, be it cooking, be it just working out. Like, for the first time when you go to the gym, you have no idea how to do any of the exercises, right?
Yeah, basically. Unless someone helps you.
But still, you don't know how to do them.
Yeah.
There is a learning process that you have to go through. And I think most people are afraid of that learning process. Because as humans, most of us, of course there's a huge number of exceptions, especially nowadays, we're very self-critical. We are anxious living things. And we do not want to make something that we're not going to be proud of. But you have to realize that when you start doing something for the first time, you're not going to be proud of that in the long run. Because it's horrible. But the more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah.
And you need to have that period where you're just ashamed to admit to anyone that you're doing something. Like, no one was born a Picasso painter. Picasso wasn't Picasso in his early age. He had to learn. He had to learn how to hold a brush. And it's the same thing nowadays. Like, if your only interest is sitting on your couch, in your bed, whatever, watching movies, or playing video games, like both of us, we love playing video games. And that is also an interest.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't have only one interest in life.
I mean, look, I don't agree with you on many points.
Okay.
On many points.
Okay. Why?
I'm gonna start with the latest.
Okay.
And I'm going. Why? Because I don't. You know, I got better muscles. Yeah, I got bigger muscles than you, so I'm right. No. Like, playing video games, yes, it's more interactive.
Yeah.
But I know so many brainless people that play video games.
True.
Even when you mentioned earlier, just sitting on the couch and watching movies, watching Netflix, whatever it is, like, those can be brainless activities.
Yeah.
The point is being interested to create afterwards. You can watch however many Netflix shows you want.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing.
Start a blog, write reviews, do whatever.
That's what I'm saying. If you only do that thing that doesn't require anything,
That doesn't inspire later on to produce
what are you
anything.
doing with your life?
Even earlier, when you said that throughout history people usually worked long hours, that's true, but they worked lighter work. It wasn't as focused as this today. Yes, it was longer, and depending which position you were, if you were a slave, you were the lowest class.
Most of them were.
Yeah. Not most of them, but yeah.
Yeah, most of them did do hard labor.
The point was, even if you do hard labor, you still have time to be inspired. Because inspiration is the only thing you need to become creative, to develop an interest. A stupid example.
Okay.
Let's take philosophy.
Okay.
Because we both studied it, we both like it.
Yep.
The
We don't like it, but
the
yeah.
only criteria you need to philosophize is a functional mind.
Yes.
That's what I believe. Now,
Yes.
I also understand the other position where Marx says that you have to have certain conditions satisfied before you can
Yes.
philosophize. But here's the difference. That's professional philosophy. Casual layman philosophy, you can do whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you can be in the fields toiling a soil like, damn, this sucks. Why the fuck am I doing this? And there's your first philosophy.
Yeah.
The point is, it makes you a bit more interesting. You're inspired, and that's my point is, that's why it's so weird to me. Like, you can be inspired to create, to thrive, to, bring something to fruition, to explore something further, to do whatever with something that's more than the given thing. Case with watching Netflix. Do something more with that. Don't just consume. Develop a further interest.
Yeah, I agree on Netflix.
Yeah.
I agree on Netflix.
Yeah. And that goes to my original point. Like, whenever you don't have an interest, time also seems to go by much slower than usual.
True.
Imagine how hellish it is to not have an interest for 60 plus years.
Yeah.
You were doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like, disregard the psychic repercussions that and imprint on you.
Yeah.
How slow would your life be going? Like every week will be just a dull repeat of the same over and over and over again. The weeks will eventually start to meld into each other.
Yeah.
You won't be able to distinguish anything.
I totally agree on that. I totally agree on this.
It's as close to a simulation of dementia as you can get. To not having interests.
I
I mean, I know it's a bit far-fetched an analogy,
it
but
is.
yeah.
Like, I wouldn't agree on the part where you said working and thinking, why am I doing this? I don't think that's philosophy in the sense of philosophy, because even when you're
fair. Look,
okay,
it isn't. But remember what we talked about earlier. When you first start doing something, it's gonna be shitty.
yeah,
Even if we don't admit that, okay, maybe that isn't philosophy. Why am I doing this? You have to remember, philosophy started with one question: why?
It did, yeah. But the thing, what I'm trying to say is, when you're working, as you said, for 16 plus hours a day, and the sun is killing you, you ask yourself, why am I doing this? So I can survive, and you just continue doing it. It's just a standard self-reflection. I don't think that's philosophy. For philosophers, we have a professor
Okay, yeah,
that we both love,
okay.
and he said the only people in ancient times who did philosophy were the fat, rich people who could sit by the sea, eat grapes or olives, and not give a shit because they had money. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, throughout history, you did not have enough time to develop interests because you were working for more than half a day. And when you're done with manual labor, because most of them did, the only people who did have interests were the rich, like the aristocrats, and the military. I personally, and we do disagree on this, but hey, it is what it is. I really do think that if you work because you have to survive, you do not have time for interest. Just like today, when people work 2 jobs, you do not have time for your interests. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, you do not have free time. And you mentioned Marx. He says that the day should be split into 3. Work, interests, sleep. If your whole day is work and sleep, you cut it out. Like, you do not have a possibility to develop an interest. So, I guess we just don't agree on this. I guess we just don't agree on this.
A lot more hardcore in this aspect. Like, I can understand you, and I can relate to that. Like, when you have work and sleep, and that's all you do for like days and days and days on and days on, I get how you don't have time for interests. But that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have time to become interesting. What I was discussing.
I'm talking today, yes.
Even if you can't do something actively or do a physical process or whatever it is, you can still at least contemplate about something.
Listen, I agree that today most people work 8 hours a day, most people.
Yeah.
And they're just lazy. They don't want to have interest.
Yeah.
I was talking about the past throughout human history where people didn't have time for interest because of work. So today, I'm totally on your side. Yeah. Throughout history, nah.
Fair.
But do you have something else to say?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Well, let us know what you think about this topic. Do you have any interest, or are you just lazy? And I guess we'll see you next time. Peace.